Good evening. We're live in the Midtown Bar and Grill in beautiful downtown Houston, and I'm joined today by Mr. Carlin and Mr. Richard. How are you two today?
Oh, we're great. Good.
Glad to have you on. So, I want to ask you guys. We've got an eclectic group up here. What do y'all think? Back in the last decade, towards the end, 2007, 2008, 2009, people thought race relations were on the mend. Do you think that things have changed decade to decade? And if so, how and why? How can we correct course if we need to? I'll start with you, Mr. Carlin.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I've definitely got an opinion on that. Of course, I'm the executive director of Erase Race, which is a concept I came up with a few years ago where I said race is the villain and we kind of need to do away with that concept. And so I've been analyzing this definitely over the last decade and more. And while people have seen some improvement, I think people have had high hopes when once President Obama was elected, thought all things were changing. But I kind of saw this subculture that was developing where every decade I noticed that we had some riots. The tension would come up and it'd go back down. And that was still the trend even under President Obama. And we had several incidences, racial incidences during the Obama tenure. And so I've seen it continually on, and it's been going up. And then, of course, in 2016 with the election of President Trump, it continued to just escalate. And so I think we kind of got here through a series of events and our history that has not been corrected. There are a lot of things, and a lot of it has to simply do with the interaction that we failed to have. In other words, we legislated the things that made us integrate, but we never really built the relationships necessary between each other to go forward in our country. So I don't think we've really made the progress, and now is another opportunity for us to do that.
Man, Mr. Carlin's a deep thinker. I love listening to your show, Erase Race. It's always phenomenal. Mr. Richard, what do you think? Do you think we're getting better, or do you think we're getting worse?
Well, I've been around, I think, longer than everybody up here, and I was a cop in Miami in the 60s. I worked for the Miami Police Department. So I went through the racial tension that was down there in 1968. I don't think the core problems have ever changed since then. And I think...
What would those core problems be?
Well, the core problem is that, currently we have a middle class that's disappearing, but I think with the black race, there were people that were relegated to being poor and have been kept poor by politicians since I can remember.
How have politicians been keeping people poor? It's an interesting claim.
It's amazing that our politicians are living in 6,000 square foot homes and they have bodyguards and they drive fine automobiles and they go to Congress and they get all this money allocated for places like Miami and Baltimore and Detroit. And yet that money disappears and they continue to live the good life, the politicians that have no term limits.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that are on the street stay on the street. They don't get any benefit out of it. And everything becomes political. Politicians on both sides, some have good ideas, some have bad. I've always thought that school choice was a great idea, but every time it comes up, it somehow gets beaten down. Mm-hmm. And I think when Obama became president, what it did is it gave great hope to the black race that a black man could be president. However, he got there and he didn't do anything for the black race that I could see.
Well, with a lot of these politicians, and that's an interesting point, a lot of these politicians, what I see them doing is, and I saw your face light up. I want to get your reaction to that in just a minute.
Yeah, you were moving.
I want to get your reaction.
I want to
get your reaction. But I'll throw my 2 cents in here. And I love these conversations. If you guys don't tune in to When Opinions Collide on Thursdays, 11 to 12, we have these conversations all the time. But my limited experience and take, my research is just kind of points to, I think if we are dividing people based on superficial external characteristics, anytime you divide people based on not on values or beliefs, but you divide and group by superficial external characteristics, you are going to put someone in the hole. if you value people as God imbued valuable people, God imbued this value into the human being when he created us. If you don't have some sort of sense of a higher power, there was someone in I forget if it was Uganda, I forget the nation, but he said he's an atheist, a strong atheist, but he said the Christian moral that there's something, anything that says there's a higher value would save our country. And that country's gone further and further. We have to have some sort of higher value to seek. And
I think you have to judge people on who they are as opposed to what they are.
the content of the color, or the content of the character, not the color of the skin. But I want to come back to real quick.
Okay, yeah.
Because I saw your face.
I want to advance this conspiracy theory because it plays off of what he was saying, and he was basically, that these people, the politicians, are there for themselves, and the poor people stay poor, and everything kind of stays the same. I want to advance that this way because I really think that's very much true. Because one of the things, and I blame public education for not giving us more critical thinking so that we really think deeply about these things and we can begin to make assessments based on reality. And so public education created us where we just kind of said, okay, yeah, just keep moving on, and we never have grown. But every time an issue, and one that we agree on 100% comes up, something distracts us. And I'll give an example, one that he used. He talked about term limits. I have never met an individual yet, and I've done this, and I've asked people, what do you think about term limits? 100%. So there might be somebody here that says, I'm not for term limits, but I've 100%, everyone agrees on that. So the American people agree 100%. If that happens, and a politician, which happened last year, about 10 months ago, a politician brought that up and said, a senator said, we need term limits. Amazingly, this event happened, this huge, Black Lives Matter is funded, and now everybody argues over Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter. We argue about that,
Absolutely.
and we forget about the fact that everybody agreed on term limits, and nobody addresses that. So that's my conspiracy theory. I go, whoa, big distractor. And I think there's something to it.
Well, how do you line your pocket if you're limited in term
Agreed.
as a politician?
Of course.
You have politicians that have been there for 40, 50, 60 years and have never done anything else in their life and have amassed this great wealth. Well, how do you amass that kind of wealth?
Yes.
Well, if you push what gets you wealthy, like the teachers union or like big pharma, the cost of drugs. I went through cancer for 27 years.
I'm so sorry.
I looked at some of the bills. Luckily, I had insurance. I looked at the bills. They'd give me an infusion. $52,000 for a quart of something.
Well, that's
Now,
another conversation to have why the government shouldn't be involved in regulating that. But
right.
they're just bad at everything they do.
Oh, yeah.
But
Limit what
it's
they do.
all into the same bucket. And the problem that we have is the people that we put in Congress, in order to do something like term limits, you need a supermajority. 51 votes don't hack it.
Well, we've had supermajorities before and not gotten anything because certain people are beholden to special interests.
Exactly.
And if you look at it, whether you love or hate Ted Cruz, most people can get behind this when he said this. He said, most politicians, they weren't the cute one. They weren't the cool one. They were not the jock. They're old, losing their hair, and they're stupid, and they're 40 years old. And the only thing that they have is, yes, Senator, yes, Congresswoman, yes, whatever it is. They love that fame and that power. And so they'll do anything to stay in power, including promise the world and deliver nothing to the community that they swore to uphold their values.
That's true, and on the ideology side of that, there's a author, Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote a book called Caste: The Origin of Our Discontent. A book, it's number 2 on the bestseller list right now, which makes a really good case for where we are with this concept of race. And it basically says that we've built into America a caste system, and which I call race. She defers to it as race summit. If she said race the whole time, it'd be exactly my belief, because she says that, and it doesn't allow people to escape out of that situation. And so that kind of feeds into all this. It feeds into not just skin color, but how society sees you, and you can never escape that thing. So people who are down there, and politicians have a reason to keep them down there because they're in that class system. So
And I forget who said this, but it was about the Greco-Roman Empire. They said the moment that people realized that they could vote themselves money was the doom of that democracy. I mean, we don't live in a democracy; we live in a democratic republic of representation. To avoid that, to avoid the minority being overruled by the majority,
which now has become somewhat worse if you look at what's going on during this pandemic. Now we have fiefdoms that are built in cities where mayors now have the ability to say you can or cannot do this, or you can or cannot have that. Cuomo came out the other day and he said, because he hates Trump, but he said, I don't believe what he says about a vaccine. So he's going to hold 8.5 million people in New York hostage until he's sure that this drug is okay for them. Last time I looked, we were in the United States. Why can't I make my decision whether I want to take it or not?
Yeah, so that's an interesting conversation on statism. We could get into the COVID thing. I'm hoping to have some doctors to come on and talk about that, but absolutely.
I could act like a doctor.
I don't play one on TV either.
Yeah,
so what do you think about that? The whole situation with COVID, there are folks who blame that on, they said that because it affects certain populations more, it is a racist or it's a race issue that is causing that.
yeah. And so, once again, and race is a catch-all for everything that happens. First of all, you don't get to double down on it simply because you use it in the first place. If you have people segregated and separated based on skin color, and then if the hurricane comes into town and it hits one particular part of the town, then it would get a large majority of that percentage of the population because they're all together. So we've doubled down on it by, first of all, installing racial ideas, racial practices, segregation, and so anything that happens then becomes race. And so it furthers, it makes everybody go, wow, it reinforces the fact that, wow, race is real because they look at the results, from what they've done.
Well, it's confirmation bias primarily. But then if you want to talk about systemic discrimination, obviously we had real systemic discrimination not in a lot of people's recent memory. I mean, as late as the 60s and 70s, 80s. But some people say there's systemic discrimination today, and I don't know if I would agree with it in the term of the 60s or 70s, but I think there's a new sort of situation that LBJ brought in when he started pushing, you can have this welfare check if the man's not in the house.
Yes.
You can have that. So what are your thoughts? I'm going to go to you and to you, and we'll come around.
Well, two things. The first one is, when you say systemic basically could also mean that we've got poor leadership.
I agree.
So I would
Amen.
that's what's systemic. If you've got poor leadership, then they will continue to do the same old things, and they don't fix the problems of a bad system.
Because they want to run the same issue.
Yes, because a good leader will fix a bad system. I mean, you look at the system of slavery that we had. We got Abraham Lincoln, and that went away. Now people argue about that, but it went away. So that's the answer to that. And so I think you can do that. And then the fact that the follow-up, what was your other point you were talking about?
So I was saying, ultimately, LBJ setting it up so that the man could not be in the home to receive welfare and targeting the black community specifically.
Yeah, and so while you have a bad system on that side where he was doing those things, there's also some responsibility for the family and for the home, for people to say, okay, but I'm responsible.
Oh, you mean people have agency?
People have agency. My mom and dad were married 60 years, and they understood that it was their responsibility. We didn't get to use any of that stuff as an excuse. Nothing was an excuse. But now, government is dad. Government is dad. And so,
Daddy, Uncle Sam.
And so I could go and say, government, dad, you owe me this. And we make that when we fight for it.
What do you think? That's a lot to come up on.
I saw a movie, an older movie, a Netflix thing during pandemic,
Sure, a lot of that going on.
Jingo. And what stuck out, I mean, there was a lot of violence and all of this, but what really stuck out to me was that when he came in and destroyed the plantation, he destroyed the master, all the slaves that had a built-in caste system that was set up by the white master. They didn't know what to do. They were freed, but they had nowhere to go and nothing to do. And what I think politics has done is there created that same caste system like with LBJ. The more children you have, the more welfare you get. But you can't have a nuclear family.
We want a
And
voting block.
so
in
now
our
you
image.
have these children that have no father figure, and you create this
Voting block.
problem.
Yes. So this is a really interesting conversation. I think I don't know if we're coming up on a break, and who knows? We may or may not be back when this commercial break is done. We're just sort of
Vince said we're
rotating
done.
through.
I think Vince said we're done.
Vince says we're done. So I want to thank you both for coming on. How can people reach you?
Oh, hey, I'm at Erase Races on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I'm at eraseraces.com on the website. Go there and get ready to think critically.
All right, Richard, 20 seconds. Where can people reach you?
I only have like home phone numbers.
Well, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
So-
He's 75. I mean, what do you expect?
Well, my name is John Arthur Fiala.
That's right.
I am with When Opinions Collide. You can find us here at this station on Thursdays from 11 to 12 now, at Opinions Collide on the Twitter. Thank you all for joining us, and you have a wonderful evening. Come join us at the Midtown Bar and Grill. We still got some party left tonight. And so that was a great conversation that we had Saturday on the 26th, or was it 28th of August? I do not remember. It was this last Saturday. We were live at the Midtown Bar and Grill. This is When Opinions Collide. Let's kind of talk about what's really going on with racial tension in the United States and who I think actually has something to gain from dividing us. We'll be back in just a moment after this break.
We work our whole lives to support our families. With one accident or illness, it can all be gone in an instant. Now there's a smart, affordable way to protect your family. Go to findhealthbenefits.com and discover low-cost life insurance for as little as $2 per month. Add to that a tax-deferred annuity that can help you protect your assets and grow your money for retirement. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. A critical illness can strike without warning and wipe out your life savings. In fact, it's the #1 reason for bankruptcy. Find Health Benefits offers an affordable solution. Get up to $50,000 if you get cancer, stroke, or a heart attack, giving you the peace of mind to focus on getting better while the plan helps you to pay your bills and medical expenses. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. 66% of seniors spend more time shopping for cable TV than Medicare plans. Most say because it's just too confusing. Laws change every year. The wrong plan could cost you thousands and prevent you from seeing the doctors you want. Introducing FindHealthBenefits.com. Save time, save money, see specialists without referrals. Go to FindHealthBenefits.com or call 877-235-6094 for this informative brochure.
Society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
And welcome back. Once again, I'm your host, John Arthur Fiala, and today's show is When Opinions Collide. We were just kind of watching and listening to a little excerpt from a show that we did on last Saturday, where we had a bunch of folks in studio, live studio audience. By the way, you're always welcome when we're doing a live show to come down to the Midtown Bar and Grill and enjoy some good food, fellowship, and hopefully some interesting conversations. A lot like that one right there. I found that one great. I've wanted to get Mr. Carlin on our show since I met that gentleman. He is a phenomenal thinker, and I only met Richard that day. However, he's a wonderful, interesting character, has a lot to say, very, very intelligent man. With that said, in 2007, 2008, race relations were on the mend. A lot of things were getting better, but then we elected a African American president. You would think things would have gotten better. However, it seems that since 2008, things have gotten progressively worse. I don't think that this is all by coincidence or by accident. I think there are folks who wish to divide us based on superficial external characteristics, as I said in that video. I think they want to hide and obfuscate their misdoings, their evil deeds behind these race wars, this social justice movement. Don't get me wrong. There are things that we need to be looking at. If we want to talk about police reform, if we want to talk about should we be using spit hoods like in that one case in New York, let's have a conversation on that. However, the fact that there's a naked man running around in the freezing cold weather, I don't think it mattered if he was white or black.